逃さない。聖なる輝きを。力を貸す。続けましょう。蹴りをつける。すべてのエーテルよ、ここに集え。解き放たん。これで諦めて。
What you just saw was Y'shtola's burst phase with 120% Brave gain up alongside 2 Brave cashback effects. Hello everyone, my name is Alphino, and today I'm going to be going over Y'shtola's Burst Plus. Lufenia Plus is dropping on global in about 2 to 3 months, so I figured it'd be helpful for anyone who's interested in it to go over her Burst Plus, since I have personally been using it so much ever since it debuted on JP for about 5 months. I will be going over her strengths, her weaknesses, what characters and call abilities I love to pair with her, and what team setups I do with her in the main party. Now I must strongly emphasize this, kit analysis is not my forte, so I might get bits and pieces wrong that gets passed by in my editing. So with that being said, I strongly encourage you guys to do your own research and look up her kit yourself. The Cydia Compendium is a great resource. It has everything about her kit listed on there, so I'd highly suggest checking it out after you watch this video. It even has other Burst Pluses on there that you might be interested in looking into if there are others you plan on greening. Now, before we move on to Y'shtola's strength, she did obtain a rework. This is purely an LD board rework, so her S1 and S2 are exactly the same as they are on global. So with that being said, let us begin. Y'shtola's Blood Lily overhead icon now has additional auras. When an ally's current bravery is above their initial brave at the start of their turn, they will obtain 20% brave damage and HP damage up, as well as gain a higher overflow. For Y'shtola herself, she will have an additional 20% brave damage up, so she herself will have 40% brave damage up. This is really good because Y'shtola's lack of very strong auras was my initial complaint with her when she initially dropped with her LD and burst. Her overhead icon felt so very empty, and overall it made her feel really weird since she was a more battery oriented support. Holy now has more hits, higher overflow. Y'shtola will get brave refund based on the HP damage dealt. It nulls action delay, it doesn't add to the turn count, and it maxes out her lilies. This feels like an amazing button to press because this will allow you to use Holy and then get her next turn right away, and then use a Flatus Misery to deal even more damage. It's an even better skill to press now because it has that little bit of turn manipulation with the unbreaking, just in case the turn order isn't in your favor, and it allows you to get just a little bit more damage output out there. Since her overhead icon does not have a turn count attached to it and it's permanently up all the time, you are not pressured into needing to press her LD skill. You can use it whenever you need to. Arrow 2 has higher overflow. It is now a double HP dump, and it batteries the party based on the HP damage dealt. This is amazing. It feels so much better to press compared to before. I press it all the time because the HP damage is so good under certain comps, which I will get to later, and overall it feels like a much more reliable button to press. A Flatus Misery, this is her Brave Plus when her Lily stacks are at 3. It has more Brave hits, higher overflow, and it has a stronger refund in between the HP damage dumps. Just like in Final Fantasy XIV, it does a lot of damage. When you consider this with her Burst Plus effect, which we will get into in just a moment, alongside Holy, she can deal out some pretty nice damage with Afflatus Misery, considering that she is a support. Okay, now her Burst Plus. This is not part of her rework, but rather the Burst Plus. Her Burst effect now has 2 additions added to it. It has 50% Brave Gain up and increases Brave Gain Overflow by 20%. The BT effect duration has been extended to 10 turns, so that is overall 20 turns of her burst effect active throughout the fight. Now keep in mind, for her burst effect to take effect, you must be above your initial Brave. Otherwise, it will not take effect, and I will touch onto this more when we talk about her weaknesses. And now we can begin her strengths, because ooh boy do I have a lot to say about it. First and foremost, just like I said earlier, Y'shtola has a very long-lasting burst effect. It is 10 turns, so with her Burst Plus ability and her Burst Phase, that is 20 turns of her burst effect being active. Since it has 50% Brave Gain up, you can stack this with other characters such as Porum and Agrius to make your battery absolutely amazing. People who have seen my stuff know that I stack Brave Gain up all the time and I battery my way through the fights because it's absolutely hilarious. With enough Brave Gain up, Y'shtola herself will deal pretty good numbers considering that she is a support with all of the battery shenanigans. She's constantly battering the party, except for when she uses Afflatus Misery, so hitting that iBrave conditional won't be too much of an issue. Her longevity itself is absolutely fantastic because her overhead has no duration on it, it cannot be dispelled, and it will always keep her Brave Plus variants active. And as we've discussed earlier, Arrow 2 and Afflatus Misery are very, very good buttons to press. Now, despite all of these strengths, she does have her weaknesses, and I think it's absolutely worth pointing out. So I will put aside all of my bias from Y'shtola, and yeah, let's go over her weaknesses. Y'shtola's biggest weakness, in my opinion, is that her stronger auras and burst effect are tied to this initial Brave conditional, while she herself doesn't offer party refund to keep it active. When I'm using Y'shtola, I'm always trying to keep this weakness in check. I'm always trying to cover it in my team comp. That way her burst effect will stay active throughout the entire fight. If you're going to use Y'shtola, this is the main weakness you must cover. Another weakness is that while her burst effect duration is very long, she has 2 instant turn rate skills, that being her EX and her LD. Me personally, I try to avoid using these skills as much as possible while her burst effect is active, and I just spam her Brave Plus. I want to keep it up as long as possible. If your damage output is really good, then you could get away with using Holy into Afflatus Misery to dish out more and more damage at the cost of a shorter burst effect duration for your party. But overall, me personally, I always avoid those skills as much as I can and just spam Brave Plus to keep the battery going throughout the whole party. Another weakness is that once her burst effect runs out, her batteries really begin to struggle. Brave Gain reduction in Lufenia Plus is very high, usually ranging from 70% to 90%. Y'shtola herself doesn't have any Brave Gain up outside of her burst effect, so once it runs out, she's going to really struggle to meet. She's going to be really struggling to battery the party, and suddenly meeting that initial Brave conditional is a lot harder than it actually sounds. This is why I usually run Y'shtola with a second support, so her batteries can keep being reliable and strong, so she can keep dishing out nice damage even if her burst plus effect runs out. And now, I will be covering what characters I really like to pair with Y'shtola, including call abilities. So let's begin with that. Now, I'm sure that people who have been following my Y'shtola series already know this, but my absolutely favorite LD call to pair with Y'shtola is Sid Reigns' LD call. For those who don't know, his LD call allows the caller to launch on every single one of their attacks for 2 turns. So I use his LD call just before Y'shtola's burst phase. That way, every turn of Y'shtola's burst phase will initiate a launch, and since her Brave Plus constantly batteries the party, aside from Afflatus Misery, if I build the comp in a certain way, in a certain manner, then I can get full batteries every single turn of Y'shtola's burst phase and deal a lot of damage with it. It's only 2 turns, but if you build around it, you can dish out some really nice damage. Now, a character I love to pair with Y'shtola is Porum. Porum in her own right is absolutely ridiculous, but I absolutely love pairing her with Y'shtola because Porum batteries a lot. She makes it really easy to meet that initial Brave conditional of Y'shtola's burst effect. So if I don't feel like really trying to figure out a unique way to meet the iBrave conditional, I just slap on Porum and then I can just battery my way through the fight even harder, considering with how much Porum batteries. Another LD call I use a lot, also Porum's, because it has a 20% Brave gain up on it. Porum is probably my most used LD call in the Lufenia Plus era. It's very good for Brave gain up comps, and I use it so much. It is absolutely ridiculous how much I use it. Another LD call is Kate Sith. I use him in certain comps. I will be covering this call a little bit more later on, but Kate Sith's LD call, for those who don't know, if you do a critical hit, you will get battery for it. So if you do a Brave hit, that's a critical, you get a little bit of battery in addition to it. So with Brave gain up, you can get a lot of battery just for hitting like ones or something. I don't use this too often, but I do use it on occasion for certain comps, and I will be covering that later. A character that I like to pair with Y'shtola is Selphie, and you can sort of think of her as like a replacement to Sid Reigns' LD call if you plan on skipping him. And that is because Selphie has 20% Brave gain up for the party. She covers Y'shtola's iBrave conditionals really easily while still giving you the launch damage for Y'shtola's burst phase. She gives you the battery, she gives you the party refund. I absolutely love pairing the two of these together because it makes Y'shtola's burst phase deal a lot more damage because of all the additional launches. Another character is Maria. Maria has 20% Brave gain up as well, but her LD debuff is also really good when you're pairing it with Y'shtola because it batteries the party at the beginning of the enemy's turns. So it can keep your party really healthy on their bravery, and just overall she can deal some really nice damage because her trap debuff also has 20% HP damage up. So she really boosts your damage output for the party while also keeping your party healthily batteried, so you don't fall below initial Brave and not have Y'shtola's burst effect active. Another character that I enjoy pairing with Y'shtola is Kain. Now, this is a little bit of a weird one, but Kain himself is really fun with Y'shtola. For those unaware, Kain's LD sort of makes him like another Yang situation, where they will always follow up after every time an ally attacks. Except this time, Kain's bravery will not deplete when he does an HP attack, and he will always follow up at the beginning of every turn, even if you use like a C65 or a call ability. Now, the reason why I put Kain here is because if you're using Selphie or Sid Reigns' LD call while Kain is up in the air, then he will join in the launch phase. Now, the main difference here is that if you HP attack with him in the launch, his bravery will not be consumed. So, with Sid Reigns or Selphie, while Kain is up in the air, you can get one free max bravery HP dump in the launch. So he pretty much band-aids the damage of Y'shtola's burst phase really well, especially when he's doing the follow-up every turn in Y'shtola's burst phase. He's absolutely amazing. I love using him with Y'shtola. It's so much fun. I also enjoy pairing Ida with Y'shtola, and before you say, oh, of course you like pairing the 14 characters together, Ida does work really well with Y'shtola. Her personal Brave regen is just strong enough in Lufenia Plus to keep her above her initial Brave, so she's pretty much always going to have Y'shtola's burst effect active, and since she can get multiple free turns, that's more turns to turn hog from Y'shtola with her burst effect active, so she can keep battering her way through her DPS. Her LD skill is also absolutely ridiculous. It has massive battery at the start of the skill, lots of refunds in between HP dumps. It's 100% AoE. Y'shtola is practically making sure that Ida's LD skill caps, and it is absolutely beautiful seeing Ida's LD skill cap on every HP dump, but hitting like 2000 Brave damage is amazing. I love pairing these two a lot. It's amazing, and also it goes really well with themes. Ida is very fun to pair with Y'shtola. Another character is Ursula. She's actually a more recent option, but she does pair really well with Y'shtola because Ursula has this Brave refund mechanic, kind of similar to Iroha's, except it's not based off HP damage, but rather on your max Brave. Y'shtola offers a really nice max Brave buff to the party, so with enough max Brave ups and auras in the party, you can have Ursula's Brave refund be above the party's initial Brave, and as such, keep Y'shtola's burst effect active. Ursula also has, Ursula's S2 also maxes out the party's bravery, so it's sort of like a get out of jail free card for Y'shtola's burst effect iBrave conditional. She pairs super well with Y'shtola. I love it a lot. I'm probably going to be using her a lot as well with Y'shtola. Now, those are the characters I like to use a lot with Y'shtola, but still there are some other noteworthy characters and call abilities that I don't really use much, but I think would work really well with Y'shtola. One of them is Agrius. I personally didn't use Agrius that much with Y'shtola. Emphasis on with Y'shtola. I used Agrius plenty on my own time off screen without her, but I imagine Agrius with Y'shtola would work super well. I have a friend that has used Agrius in so many Lufenia pluses, so she is more than viable in Lufenia Plus. She is just, I don't use her that much with Y'shtola, but I imagine if you build around the two in certain comps and calls, she can do really well with her turn manipulation, Brave gain up, and her debuff, her Brave plus debuff that increases HP damage dealt. I imagine Agrius would work super well with Y'shtola as well, in a somewhat similar manner as Maria. A call ability that I think would work really well is Kais's LD call for the party refund after a launch. This is usually for when you're pairing Y'shtola with Selfie or Sid Reigns' LD call. Kais's LD call will inflict a debuff, which makes it to where you will get party refund after a launch. This will make it easier to meet the iRave conditional on Y'shtola's burst effect. I don't have Kais's LD call, so I don't know how effective it really is, but I imagine it works super well in covering the initial Brave conditional for Y'shtola's burst effect. A character that I don't use that much, but I think would work really well with Y'shtola is Quistis and her LD call. Quistis' LD call is kind of like Porum's, where it also offers Brave gain up, except it's only 10%, but 10% can still come a long way. Quistis herself in the main party does 20% Brave gain up and she also has a lot, and I mean a lot, of delay. She can make it really easy to set up Y'shtola's burst phase, and I think she would work really well with Y'shtola. Me personally, I didn't use Quistis that much. I like to let the bosses act, so I didn't really use Quistis that much, but she's more than so viable as well. She also has plenty of completes in Lufenia Plus after her release. But I imagine Quistis will work super well with Y'shtola as well. Another character, and this is a Burst Plus character, is Bartz. Now there are plenty of Y'shtola and Bartz comparisons, and what I have to say to that is they are two very different characters. Bartz helps shaving output while still offering a little bit of battery increases, whereas Y'shtola is purely on the battery increases but has a longer burst effect. They are very different characters. Do not compare the two. Or you can actually combine the two of them. Use them both in the same party. I usually like to stay with one burst in the main party, but for those who don't really care about that, you can pair the two of them together, because Bartz also has party refund and Brave gain up for Y'shtola, making him a really good candidate with Y'shtola. Me personally, y'all know my relationship with Bartz if you've talked to me. I find Bartz very boring. He is permanently benched on my bench for a long time. He remains as my biggest regret, but that does not mean he's bad. Bartz is amazing. Don't get me wrong, he is amazing. He pairs really well with Y'shtola, but I like to stick with one burst character in the party. Another character that can work, and this is another Burst Plus character, is Firion. Now Firion is much later, and I mean I think he's about 4 or 5 months later after Y'shtola releases. But he is another option to pair with Y'shtola because he also has party refund on his burst effect and 50% Brave gain up. 50%. So you can combine the two of them together. You'll automatically have 100% Brave gain up. That completely blows the water, even on 90% Brave gain reductions. It's ridiculous. You can compare You can pair the two together and do so much damage. It's absolutely funny, and I'm sure you all saw how much damage you can do with the two of them from the beginning of this video. Okay, so we've gone over all the characters that I love pairing with Y'shtola, as well as some noteworthy ones that I think will work really well. Keep in mind, that does not mean that these are absolutely mandatory to get to make Y'shtola absolutely ridiculous. These are my personal preferences on the characters that I pair with Y'shtola. There might be other characters that work super well with Y'shtola that I didn't cover, nor did I even figure out, just keep that in mind. These are simply my own personal preferences. I cannot emphasize that enough. These are by no means mandatory pulls to make Y'shtola work. Okay, now with that out of the way, let's talk about my setups. I'm sure everyone has been looking forward to this. I'm going to go in depth into my setups. There are two setups that I usually do with Y'shtola. There is the launch method, which I do a lot more with Y'shtola. So that's Y'shtola with selfie and or sit reigns, and then there is a follow-up method. This usually with someone that can deal follow-up damage, but it's primarily with Kain and or Cloud of Darkness support. Usually with a Cloud of Darkness support. So first, let's begin with the launch method. This is the one I use a lot with Y'shtola. So the launch method is, in my opinion, harder to pull off, but with a good comp, you can make Y'shtola dish out a lot of damage. So for this method, I absolutely hate saying this, but I do think you're either going to need Sid Reigns' LD call or selfie in the main party, because those are the only two characters that can make Y'shtola do consecutive launches in her burst phase. If I'm missing anyone, please let me know. I really hope it's not just these two, but as far as I can recall, I think it's just these two. If I'm missing anyone, do not hesitate to let me know. Okay, so in this comp, I said this in the weaknesses, but your main issue is going to be trying to meet the iBrave conditional. You're going to need some manner of party refund after a launch, so you can keep Y'shtola's burst effect active. If you're using selfie, you're good to go. She gives party refund after the launch itself, so you don't have to worry about the iBrave conditional. Now with Sid Reigns' call, it's a little bit trickier because he doesn't offer Brave Refund, so you're going to have to get it from a different source. This is why I mentioned Kais's LD call, because Kais's LD call gives party refund after a launch based on the launch damage dealt. I don't know exactly how strong it is because I don't have him, but that is a good alternative, especially if you're going to be swapping out a certain character. You can just do the LD call for the debuff and then swap him out for someone else. You could also use a support, like by support I mean the friend support. So like Bart's friend support would work super well. You just gotta time building up Bart's stacks with setting up Y'shtola's burst phase. But if you can set it up right, a Bart's friend support will solve your refund issue really well. If you're trying to get refund in your main party, then Rosa will be a nice addition. She gives party cashback based on HP damage dealt. I personally didn't use Rosa a lot, but I'm sure with the right setup she will work just fine for the refund. So that is someone to keep in mind as well. So overall, if you're doing the launch method, your main problem solving will be coming from how to keep everyone's how to keep everyone's current bravery above their initial bravery at the end of every launch. Selfie makes it super easy to achieve. Sid Reigns is a little bit trickier. The moment you can figure this out, you can stack as much break gain up as you want, and then you can dish out some really high damage with this launch method. This is the method I use a lot because it makes Y'shtola do a lot of damage, but of course it may not be for everyone. Now, what if a boss was unlaunchable? What can you do? What if the boss was immune to launch? Well, that is why I have the second setup. That is the follow-up method with Kain or a Cloud of Darkness friend support. So now let's transition into my second setup. I don't do it as often, but it is a super nice alternative if you don't plan on getting Selfie or Sid Reigns, or if a boss is launch immune or takes reduced damage in a launch. So let us begin with that setup. So the follow-up method doesn't do as much damage as the launch method, but in my opinion, it is a lot more flexible and easier to set up. This method doesn't focus on Y'shtola's personal damage output, but rather focuses on supporting your follow-up attacker and making sure they are capping as much as possible throughout a burst phase. I mentioned about using Kain or Cloud of Darkness supports, but you can also use them in the main party and they will do just fine. You could also use Vayne, but if you're going to be using Vayne, I recommend using him in your main party instead and using his burst phase over Y'shtola's burst phase, since Vayne's follow-ups only trigger when initiating a break, and Y'shtola won't be breaking too often in her burst phase. Your main goal in this setup is to make the refund from your follow-up attacker be strong enough to cap out their bravery, so it's easier for them to cap out on their next follow-up attack every turn, so that you will have a capping follow-up attack during a character's burst phase. If you're using Kain, you don't have to worry about the refund part because his bravery will not deplete after doing his follow-up. At that point, you only have to worry about making sure his follow-up caps and having enough HP damage up modifiers. But the refund is something you're going to have to worry about on your other follow-up attackers, such as Cloud of Darkness or Vayne, or even Noctis later down the line when he gets his burst plus. This setup is where I use my Kate Sith LD call. It is not needed, but it does make it a lot easier, and it serves as sort of a safety net to make sure that your follow-up attacker is capping alongside all the Brave Gain up bonuses. So for this setup, you mainly want to focus on Brave Gain up as usual, but also focus up on HP damage up modifiers, whether that be from calls or from buffs. Again, this setup does not deal as much damage as a launch method as far as I can tell, but it is a lot easier to set up and is a lot more flexible to everyone. And I think that is it. I've gone over everything I wanted to go with about her. We've gone over her strengths, her weaknesses, what characters and call abilities I like to pair with her, and what type of team setups I like to use her in. I must emphasize again, kit analysis is not my forte, so I strongly encourage you all to do your own research. Look up her kit yourself, look up other videos on how people are using Y'shtola, because their playstyles could be very different from mine. The two methods that I have listed out previously are not the end-all be-all ways to use her. They are simply just my personal playstyles around using Y'shtola. Y'shtola is not a must pull, but if you build around her, then I think you will absolutely carry a massive load off of your shoulders for a very, very long time. I have a playlist of all of my Y'shtola runs called Blood for the Blood Lily. She has completed every single Lufenia Plus up to date, with a very large majority of the runs with her as the only burst character in the party. So hopefully I explained her burst plus really well. I absolutely love using it. It feels very, very satisfying to use. Y'shtola has been improved so much since her initial LD burst debut, and I absolutely love it. If there's anything that's confusing or you need further clarity on, please let me know. I'll happily answer any questions. And I am open to all forms of criticism. I am not the best at this type of content, so I am hoping to further improve upon it as the days go on. I am considering doing more videos like this for the other Final Fantasy XIV LDs when they get closer to their LD release on global, so please look forward to it when the time comes. And that will be it from me, guys. Hope you all enjoyed this, and I will see you all in my next video. Bye bye.